This video is part of a larger series wherein I will be watching every film made by Studio Ghibli. If you haven't already, definitely watch episode 1 first, as it contains important information about this series. But with that out of the way, today I watched Maho no Takyubin, or Kiki's Delivery Service, released in 1989. And spoiler warning, these movies have just been getting better and better. I liked Castle in the Sky and Grave of the Fireflies, and I thought My Neighbor Totoro is a step up from those two. And now that I've watched Kiki's Delivery Service, I feel like this studio has one-upped themselves yet again. I've got a lot to talk about with this one, so I'll start simple with the visuals. I've praised the past 3 Ghibli movies for their artwork, oftentimes using specific examples of highlights from each movie, but Kiki is basically nothing but highlights in this regard. There was not a single frame in this movie that I wouldn't consider absolutely beautiful. This movie just really checks all the boxes. Stellar character designs, check. During the scene where Gigi is pretending to be a toy, I realized how perfect his design was for an actual toy to be made out of him. Kiki's outfit is simple and clean. I love the accent of red that her bow gives her, and every other character is stylized to convey their personality perfectly and with just one glance. Incredible background art, check. What can I say? I absolutely love the painterly aesthetic that this film has going, and every shot always has the perfect amount of detail. You know, it's crazy to think of how some of these paintings must have taken hours of work, and some only show up on screen for a few seconds in this whole film. And yet the artist put in enough effort to make every second of this movie an absolute treat for my eyes. Amazing character animation, check. I watched a video not too long ago about how fight scenes that take place in the air have no momentum or impact, and that was a great video, but I gotta say, this concept could not apply less to Kiki. Watching her take off into the skies was always a treat because of how much personality they managed to convey in the way that she occasionally loses control of the broom and tumbles around in the air while trying to re-coordinate herself. Like, it demonstrated how determined of a person Kiki is and still how much she has to learn, which was very endearing. I also loved how Gigi climbed around on Kiki while they were on her broom and how his fur occasionally spikes out to make him extra expressive. Several shots of amazing environmental animation, check. You know I'm a sucker for some animated backgrounds, and while this movie might not have anything on the same caliber of the rolling hills sequence in Castle in the Sky, it has several more examples to draw from, primarily in the first act of the story, all which look absolutely gorgeous. I think my favorite would have to be the scene of Kiki looking out onto the sea in the new town when she's riding the train. Wonderful directing and near flawless cohesion in all of these elements, check. I don't even know what to tell you here. The lighting is beautiful, shot composition is great, color palette is stellar. This movie is gorgeous. Every second of it is gorgeous. I also loved the audio design, and I want to call special attention to Kiki's voice actress, specifically because in My Neighbor Totoro, Satsuki was around the same age as Kiki, and they kind of sound similar, but now that I've seen both films, I feel like I have more to say about her and why I prefer Kiki's voice more. Satsuki's actual voice sounded older than Mei's, her little sister, but the way that she often articulated her words and stuff made her come across like she was trying to act younger than she actually was. Now, I totally get that basically the entire point of Totoro is about capturing a sense of childlike wonder, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't occasionally find Satsuki a bit much. On the other hand, I think that Kiki's voice actress feels less like she's capturing an idea with her performance and more like she's capturing a character with a fully fleshed out personality. She just sounds so hopeful and grateful whenever people are nice to her, and it perfectly gelled with the characterization that Kiki received. And speaking of, Kiki had probably the best characterization out of any character from the Ghibli movies I've seen so far. I can definitely see the argument for why Seita from Grave of the Fireflies has stronger characterization, but I definitely related to Kiki more, so I prefer her. If you're familiar with my work at all, you've probably noticed that I hardcore stan characters who are disciplined and hardworking. Even if it's misguided, if your character has a mission and they put their nose to the grindstone to accomplish that mission, I will love them immediately. One of my favorite moments in this movie was when the grandma who wanted to send a pie to her granddaughter offered Kiki payment, even though the pie wasn't cooked so she couldn't deliver it yet, and Kiki would not accept payment for the work that she hadn't done. And on top of simply maintaining Kiki's personality, which had been established up until this point, this scene also had the meta factor of showing me what modern anime that makes use of the main character doesn't want to accept payment because they're oh so nice trope are doing wrong. Not gonna name any names. It's not all that uncommon, especially in isekais, for a show to introduce its main character and hastily show them being overly humble by helping out some random background character or something, and then not accepting anything in return for their good deed. Oftentimes they even seem uncomfortable receiving thanks. And truth be told, this isn't like a terrible way to characterize your lead. The worst thing I could say about it is simply that it feels very generic and fails to make the main character stand out amidst the dozens of other cookie-cutter protagonists that flood the market each season. But the difference between what I just described to you and Kiki's delivery service is that rather than ending up rejecting compensation for the work she didn't do, Kiki accepts the compensation and then works her ass off to actually prove that she deserves it. It's the difference between telling and showing, between taking someone's word for the personality of a character and seeing that personality in action firsthand. But furthermore, I'd also say that on top of Kiki being the best in terms of personality when compared to other Ghibli films, she was also the first one to undergo a real character arc. Don't get me wrong, the characters from the first 3 movies were all great, but I felt like they didn't so much evolve as people over the course of each of their respective films, but more so that they overcame or attempted to overcome a challenge that was presented to them. But Kiki, on the other hand, gets the best of both worlds in this regard. The plot presents her with challenges for her to overcome, she does, and it feels great, but those challenges are directly tied into her progression as a character. Like, her whole shtick is that she wants to become a strong, successful witch, and the movie represents this in her flying ability. Flying is what makes Kiki unique, it's what makes her who she is. She needs to be skilled with magic to be able to fly, and her ability to do so directly affects her business's success. All of this amplifies the stakes of the narrative climax. Not only does Kiki need to save Tombo because he will die if she doesn't, but she needs to prove that she can fly, she needs to prove that she can run a successful business, she needs to prove that she can become a powerful witch. And the movie really makes you feel like she might fail because of how perfectly they struck that balance between showcasing Kiki's skills and showcasing how much she has to learn. Take, for example, the scene where Kiki takes this lady's delivery order, and while she's rushing to put away her groceries, we learn that she bought a map of the town. Like, that's really smart. I wouldn't have thought of that, and it just demonstrated how much thought and effort Kiki has put into reaching her goals. But of course, she runs into complications while actually delivering the stuffed cat, showcasing that she still has a lot of room for improvement. It really did a good job of invoking that feeling of working to improve at a skill that you're passionate about. Anyway, shifting gears, I also wanted to talk about the music in this movie, which was great, just like the first 3, and I absolutely loved the music that Kiki played on the radio when she first left home, and then the music that played over that sort of epilogue sequence at the end. I'm definitely gonna look for those 2 songs on Spotify to put on my playlist, but anyway, the most memorable scene sonically in this film for me was the entire sequence that made up the movie's climax. Kiki is flying up to Tombo and just desperately trying to reach him before he falls, and the entire scene has no music. And I can't express how much this did for enhancing the experience. I feel like there's almost no musical piece that wouldn't take away from this scene. The lack of music put the audience in the character's shoes, which exponentially enhances the tension of the scene. And then when Tombo loses his grip and Kiki rushes down to save him, just barely catching him in time, the movie goes completely silent. Not even wind, not even voices, just the subtlest of sound effects to Kiki catching Tombo, and then the music finally kicks in, and the townfolk start cheering even harder than they were before. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention that the townfolk were cheering for Kiki. That was also amazing. And the fact that the past couple minutes had just been devoid of instrumentation, when the de facto victory theme swells up along with the crowd just going on into utter celebration, my catharsis was palpable. I will say that the fire department bringing in that bouncy pad thingy to catch their falls sorta retroactively deflated the tension of the climax. I mean, yeah, it's totally possible that they just got there at that point in the scene, but it doesn't change the fact that my immediate reaction to this was to scream, "Why didn't you do that earlier?" I don't know, maybe that news reporter guy said something about the fire department running late or something. I don't know. If he did, I totally missed it. Probably the biggest flaw I felt was present in this movie was that it wasn't exactly clear on why Kiki got upset with Tombo. Like, all he did was talk to some of the other kids, and then Kiki just did a 180 from liking him to seemingly being really frustrated with him. It's completely possible that I might be missing something here, but either way, it did cause me to be pretty confused about why Kiki's magical powers were getting weaker. Like, at first I was thinking that maybe she didn't like the idea that technology could allow non-witches to fly, since Tombo was talking about the huge zeppelin with the other kids before Kiki gets mad. And like, maybe it has something to do with that, but I think I was just thinking back to the episode of Good Hunting from Love, Death Plus Robots with that one. I'm inclined to think that this wasn't the intended message because although the zeppelin is what puts Tombo's life in danger, the epilogue-esque section at the end of the film shows that Kiki and Tombo were flying together, so that's probably not it. Later on, Ursula speculates that Kiki's magical powers are like an artist's motivation to create art, in that sometimes you're just not feeling it and the best thing you can do for yourself is take a break. And I definitely like this interpretation more because of what I already talked about with the whole learning a new skill thing, but then like, why did the loss in magical ability come directly after she got upset with Tombo? Like, the natural response for a viewer would be to assume that sequential events are connected somehow, so I'm not 100% sure on how to interpret this. But honestly, this is the worst thing I could think to say about Kiki's delivery service, and the pros far outweigh this one little con. Oh, also I forgot to mention that the scene where the old lady makes Kiki a cake and they basically become best friends was unbelievably sweet and adorable. I seriously squealed, guys. I love this movie. I would give it a strong 8, maybe a light 9, and that makes it my favorite Ghibli movie yet. Hopefully this studio is able to keep getting better, because if they manage to one-up Kiki's delivery service, I will just be so happy. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed, and I would love to hear what you thought about this film down in the comments, assuming you're watching these movies along with me or that you had already seen it. In the next episode of Watching Every Ghibli Movie, I am going to be watching Omoide Poro Poro, or Only Yesterday. If you want to know when that video will drop and when many of the other videos in this series will drop, you can look down in the description to find a schedule for when each new part is scheduled to be released. With that said, have a wonderful day, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.